My name is Matt Marshall, and I'm the President and CEO of United Way of West Tennessee and the Chair of the Jackson-Madison County Equity Project. So the Jackson Equity Project is the result of our community coming together, recognizing that there are still several hurdles that we as a community need to overcome. And a lot of it was, in honesty, a response to the uprisings and the insecurities, rightly so, that so many have felt in this country, even in our own community. And so back around midway through the year, in June, we started having meetings with just several leaders around the community to really gauge where people were. And one of the things that came out of that was that there was still a very large population in our community that felt unheard, that felt as though they did not have equal opportunities, that equity was not a reality for them. And so we put together this group that is bipartisan, it's Republican and it's Democrat, it's Black and it's white and everywhere else in between, of people who, what they have in common is that they want to see a better Jackson. They want to see this community move forward in the ways that are truly possible when we come together. And so, again, we recognize that there's a lot of work to do. And so we formed several different committees. There's workforce development and business development committees, there's education, there's several others, health disparities, criminal justice reform, all of these with the main purpose and goal of making Jackson a better place. I said it to a lot of our members over the course of the last several months. I'm a fifth generation Jacksonian. My great-great-grandfather came to this community because he saw it as a place of opportunity. But are there people today that look like my great-great-grandfather and look at this community and see that same opportunity? Maybe some, but there are many who feel as though they don't have those opportunities. And as I raise my own kids, I want Jackson to be the type of place that they feel like they can grow up in, that they can maybe even live their lives in and raise their kids in, recognizing that they have equal opportunity, that it is no longer an inequitable place, but it is a place of equity. And so that is our desire, and we want to invite people to be a part of that process with us. So even as we think about those maps that just showed on the screen, which shows a history of redlining, and even just specifically in this state, not to mention across the country, we recognize that where we are in the present is a result of where we've been in the past. And so we can't just kind of, try to move forward without recognizing those things. We can't try to move forward without addressing them. And so when we think about disparity in our community, one of the central places that shows itself, even here in Jackson, Tennessee, is in home ownership. And so if you're a white brother or sister living in this community, your likelihood of being a homeowner is much, much higher than if you're a person of color. And so what is driving those realities? Well, one of the things historically has been this issue of redlining, where if you were a person of color, you couldn't even purchase a home in certain parts of the city. And so this is true again across our country. And so why that is so important is that many of us know in economics, and as we talk about building family wealth, that one of the quickest and easiest and best ways to do that is through home ownership, is through property. But if people aren't given that opportunity to do that, like has been the case historically, then that puts them severely behind the eight ball. And so we have to figure out how to bring more equity into areas like home ownership. and so that people can have those equitable opportunities to be able to get ahead. That's just one area where we see these disparities play out, but we could talk about health, we could talk about the court systems. There's so many others. And so we're really thankful to partner with the Sycamore Institute, a very well-known, prominent organization that does research here in Tennessee, to be able to show these realities to the public. So as we think about the impact of these disparities, it's been pretty profound. I think about people that I grew up with, that I know really well, that I'm still, friends with. And I think about the opportunities that they were afforded. And I think about the opportunities that other people that I grew up with, and that I know well and that I'm still friends with, that they were not afforded. Simply because maybe the part of the town that they grew up in, or again, those academic opportunities that they may or may not have been afforded because of certain things. And so that really pains me to think about. Just being honest, I'm the first African American to ever hold the position of president or CEO of United Way in its 80-year history. And we think about this community, and we think about the number of people of color who've held positions at that level. It's very far and few in between. And that really shouldn't be the case. We should be reminded that this community is about 43% African American, about 50% white, 53% or 54% white, somewhere around there. It's fairly equal. But yet when we look at the opportunities that are afforded people in their careers, when we look at the opportunities that are afforded for people to get ahead, we see stark differences. And so part of how this is played out is that we have a very large section of our community that lives in poverty because of those lack of opportunities. And then one of those other realities in our community that is sad to say, what ends up happening with many of our African American brothers and sisters who are educated, who are gifted, many of them don't see Jackson as a place that they can stay. And so they end up leaving. And so we lose some of our best and brightest because, again, we're not affording those opportunities, and then we're not raising up and giving those opportunities to the ones that stay. And so overall, that's part of why the Equity Project has been created and why it exists, to be able to advocate for those opportunities, to work alongside everyone. We want to, again, have people from different backgrounds come together, and let's have very serious conversations about this, about how we can make Jackson better for all of us. Because that's the reality. If Jackson is good for one person, it should be good for another. And that shouldn't be at all dependent upon the color of your skin or where you were born or your income. That should be solely dependent upon your skill level, what you're bringing to the table. And that's, again, that's another narrative we have to change, that there are so many skilled people here. There are so many people who want to work and who want to do well, and we just need to afford them those opportunities. So part of how we see moving forward in Jackson is the Equity Project serving as a catalyst to bring people together to have some very open and honest and frank conversations about where we are, but also about where we can be. That being said, I think it's very easy at times for us to talk about what the problems are, but I think it's so important for us to come to the table with solutions, with real solutions that will help everyday people. That ultimately is what this is all about. It's not about me, it's not about any of these particular other people or organizations. This is about the community. This is about putting our community first and lifting up those people who are the most in need. United Way, that I have the privilege to be a part of, about a year ago, we put out this project or report called the Alice Report. And what it showed is that about half of the people living in this community are a flat tire away from being in pretty substantial financial trouble. And then think about what the pandemic has done over this past 12 months. If we dig in a little deeper into that data, what we see is that the majority of those folks are people of color. Again, we have to ask questions about why that is. And again, we have to do that authentically. We then have to bring people together from various different walks of life to be able to come up with those solutions and be able to implement them. Even the folks in the Equity Project, while it is very diverse and made up of several leaders around the community, we can't come up with all of those solutions on our own. And so we're going to need the involvement of others in Jackson, in Madison County, to help along that way. And so that's a huge challenge that we have in front of us, but we're 100% committed to it. Because again, at the end of the day, we want Jackson to be the best Jackson that it can be. And so I'm, super hopeful. I am incredibly optimistic about what can happen and what will happen when we work together and when we put our heads together to come up with those solutions. And so again, we invite folks in the community to become a part of this effort so that we can implement true change.